While Rose was quietly watching the Royal Knights practice, the squad's commander walked up and told him to go. He says he's been standing there like a crazy man all night long, bothering everyone. His maid rushes in to announce, "Hey, this is a prince." But the commander pays her no mind. They call him a useless, ugly, and manless jerk who's ruining their training. Then the commander met the boy's eyes and saw a look he never expected. She had a fierce, scary look in her eyes that was way too old for a 14-year-old. The air grows thick and still as the soldiers step forward to find out what's happening. When they spot the third prince, the one everyone laughs at, they finally let their guard down. Then the kid grabs a twig from a branch above and tells the commander that his knights are trash. The troops aren't getting stronger. They're just being babysat and wasting time, which angers Dud so much he's about to curse at the boy until the kid suddenly appears right behind him. Abel barely lifts his sword in time, knowing that if he hadn't, he would be dead. He barely managed to block the stick's deadly blow right before it could land. The kid smiles, then drops the branch and the commander's sword flies out of his hands and vanishes, leaving him disarmed in front of every soldier under his command. The kid tells the commander that his poor fighting skills are actually pretty impressive. He was so helpless he couldn't even fight back against someone who was completely useless. Abel sinks to his knees and pleads for forgiveness. While his men freeze in place, their leader crawls across the gravel to beg before the prince no one respects. Now, this guy's real name is actually Baron. Once, he ruled the land of Sacria as its king. He battled the entire kingdom of Qs. A fierce war broke out over a magical object called the Axis of Time, which could actually turn back the clock and rewrite history. Qs set everything ablaze, turning it into nothing but ash and fire. The Baron gave up everything to those Qs thugs when he was trapped alone with only a sword and one arm left while surrounded by enemy mages. They shot a beam at my poor friend. And then he woke up in a soft bed surrounded by servants inside the royal palace of Qs, the very kingdom that destroyed him and his crew. With Kion's body, he's ready to set this whole place on fire and wipe out everyone inside. The trouble is that this guy is the weakest, most hated, and poorest member of the royal family. At least he got a maid who looked like a girl at first but turned out to be a fertile female, just as Bro sat down to eat and chill, dreaming about his new life. But the king has ordered all three princes to eat together in this house. When Planche, the guy who thinks he's in a One Piece anime and wears that jacket over his shoulder at 7 a.m., walked in, our boy stopped acting shy and just stared right at him, saying, "Yo, what's up?" Suddenly, someone grabbed a knife and threw it at the boy on our side to pierce his skull, but he caught it midair like it was nothing, then walked up and told him, "Careful, bro. Next time it could end right in your face," and the brother was just left stunned. Then I got roasted by the grungiest guy in this whole place. Now things aren't running smoothly because something nearly went wrong. When the knife flew toward him, his body reacted on instinct and he almost unleashed his aura. The aura warrior's years spent fighting on the battlefield nearly got him killed in a quiet dining room. But then he felt something unexpected, a sharp pain deep inside his chest that had nothing to do with the knife, and when he checked, he discovered something that changed everything. 3 glowing rings of magic spun around his heart. This body isn't just that of a weak prince. It belongs to a mage. 3 perfect circles are already drawn, a sign of amazing talent that has become almost a curse. After spending his entire life wielding heavy swords, he is now forced to cast glowing orbs, a struggle made worse by the crushing pain that tears through his chest every time he tries to use his magic. His body is shrinking fast. He can hardly run 3 laps around the palace lake before he nearly falls apart. Suddenly, his nose begins to bleed without any warning. The royal tailor, who measures him every time, keeps saying he's getting thinner. A person standing with 3 glowing mana circles around them. The royal dragon bloodline heals itself constantly, like a wound that never stays open. It should be getting stronger instead of falling apart. But that's happening because this kid is getting poisoned. The poison in his blood is so deadly that without the dragon lineage burning it away every second, he would already be dead. This wasn't just a random attempt on his life. Some stranger has been stealing our day after day. But who could it be? Bro knows that in the first timeline this boy died at 15 after trying to poison the queen and then hanging himself. What if that whole story was just a big lie? Just as we were talking about suspects, our bro suddenly sniffed the air and knew someone was approaching. This is cuz the current queen, and she is showing her real dog behavior. He knew it had to be his stepmother because of her eye color. Holly fits the stepson theme perfectly with her thick lips, and she tells our boy he's looking grown and healthy, prompting her brother to reply that he hasn't grown much yet, but will see more growth soon, which is the kind of story direction she loves, making the air suddenly feel heavy. Vic Count claimed he barely recognized him because the man rarely showed his face. He was destined to grow up into a very tall man. And that was the moment the queen slammed her hand down and cut the conversation short. Who would have guessed that the Viscount is actually a lapdog, just as the rumors claimed? The queen demanded to know why the plane hadn't told her about the horse that refuses to obey its rider. It would have been great if he had told them, but Blanche just smiled and said she already knew. He claimed the reins were lost and her son called the horse useless. He jumped up and ran out of the room, leaving his angry mother behind. 3 weeks later, it was finally time for the king's birthday party. The king, who acts like a doormat for his wife, loves everything in the palace. The regular folk are buzzing with excitement over the party. Everyone is desperate to catch a glimpse of the princes. While they were preparing the kid, the tour started to get really worried. Blood began streaming down Killian's nose. When one servant suddenly started bleeding from the nose, everyone else in the room jumped into a panic. The butler asked for some compresses to help out. The prince brushed it off as just a bad night's sleep, but the tailor, who checks on him so often, noticed that the boy had lost even more weight. Killian tried to steer the conversation away by claiming his weight loss was just from working out too hard. The moment the tour vanished, the butler whispered to himself if this day had finally come. No matter what happens, Cillian must see Ellen before any rumors of his illness spread, and because the king's schedule is delayed, he'll have to visit his sons one by one. The kid has no time to waste and just wants his dad to talk to everyone all at once. He never saw this private meeting coming. King Roma pretended not to hear the prince's announcement while he kept reading his papers, acting as if the prince had never shown up at all. Killian thought that was unbelievably rude until the king told him to sit down. The king asked some general questions and said his son was doing just fine. Suddenly, everything clicked for Killian. Now he finally understands why the king needs to talk to his sons without anyone else around. This way, he saves time by skipping the awkward chats, leaving him with a family that's truly a mess. There was a father who didn't care at all. The brothers were so bored they didn't care about the wonderful place around them. The planters had just landed, and he was already drunk and rude. The one who cares most about that meeting is the queen, the powerful woman who keeps her own husband in line. Amidst the crowd, someone is plotting to kill the prince. Now he must figure out who the killer is. Because of the celebration, the prince stepped forward before everyone looking like a completely different person. His very presence already casts a shadow over the drunken Prince Plancho. As the nobles whispered and started rumors, Callan finally walked into the hall, leaving everyone behind him stunned. The rumors were true all along. A black-haired, red-eyed prince who looked just like Zephanian had arrived. He chopped off his hair so that his whole face was finally on show. And he's even got a bright red brooch pinned to his chest. It's a quiet way of telling everyone he's finally stopped hiding. The butler stepped closer to ask him something. He couldn't help but wonder why so many people were giving him that strange look. He even wondered if the prince looked that good just because of his fancy clothes. Callan knows the jewels are making everyone turn their heads. It was all the tour's doing. The butler comes from Q's too, just from a tiny town in the middle of the land. The prince asked if they would visit the capital, and the butler explained they would need an official invitation to do so. With the prince pressing too hard, the butler looked like he was ready to explode, yet he quickly steered the conversation away. The prince waits for the perfect moment to meet the person he really wants to see. He asked the butler if he knew why that place is called Siegfried Hall. They named it after the very first hero of that family line. For 500 years they've guarded the land for the royal family, and the prince, who once loved hearing tales of this, now stands in the grand hall facing the mighty and long-serving Duke Siegfried. The prince enjoys hanging out with folks just like those. He used a tiny bit of magic to test the man's sharpness, and he was noticed right away. The test played out just like we thought it would. The butler noticed the Duke staring right at the prince. He stands among the 5 legendary swordmasters who rule the entire continent. For now, the prince will pretend nothing happened. Amidst the bustling hall, the king turned to his guests and gave them his warm thanks for showing up. Callian stood outside with his butler. The kid finally tamed the stubborn horse and found out it was actually gentle and smart. They had to make their way to the big gates. Someone couldn't get past the door. Kian snapped to and saw exactly what was happening. It was the person he had been searching for all along. Ellen has no invite to the party, so the guards are holding her back, not realizing she's an important mage. But he's still being held back by them. Ellen believes that people are treated differently simply because of how they look. The prince sees the mage is pretending to be ready to leave just so he has an excuse to stay away, while the butler reminds them they can't chase him because that would break the king's rules. Callian couldn't lose the mage's trail, so he ordered his butler to hold off the guards and then kicked his horse hard toward Ellen. The knights commanded the prince to halt at once. The king's command locked everyone inside, but the boy on his black horse leaped right past the guards and rode out, leaving the butler scrambling to find a way to stop the guards from letting him go. Packed with energy, he shouted at the knights to halt right then because the prince had gotten Siegfried's okay. At last, the butler finally showed us his true face. His name is Soyen, the oldest son of Duke Siegfried. Later, someone was laughing so hard about what just happened. The butler's father was so impressed by his son's cleverness that he couldn't help but praise him. When he left, he was just a small boy. That was the right call to make. The boy is scared that the duke and the king might stop getting along. Siegfried is certain the king won't ask questions, so nothing will happen. He can't stop worrying about everything, so he keeps thinking that if the prince accepts help from that family, he won't be in trouble. The power between them is so fragile that everyone will pretend it never happened. Ellen saw that the young prince had stepped outside and was being followed as if someone was ready to criticize him. He asked what the third prince of cheese was up to, chasing right after him. Kion knew that when he got to the seventh circle, time would move much slower for him. The kid muttered it was already late and wondered if the mage was truly gone. The mage explained that when he tried to open that door, he found a massive barrier blocking his way. Callan felt a bit annoyed since the mage didn't even seem eager to stay. Callian told me he went through the wrong door because someone else was already waiting for him. The mage realized he was being called out, so he stopped listening to excuses and saw that he was up against a very sharp prince. He looks way older than 14. That's when the mage spotted something. He took a step forward, his face full of real worry. As soon as he touched the prince's hands, a burst of energy shot up and made the prince scream in pain as his chest seized. The mage poured his magic right into the prince's veins. The connection grew so strong that Callian had to let go. The mage warned that you can't stop the wind from sneaking past, even if you shut all the doors. This master had seen what was wrong with the kid. Callan admitted he can only hold so much magic, but that's not the trouble that's really got him worried. We just need to know if the mage has finally cracked the code. Ellen just couldn't stop staring at him with such curiosity. Even though they carry dragon blood, Karis sneers at mages and completely ignores Ellen. But now he felt that destiny had led him to this boy, so he asked why the prince wanted to meet him. Kael knows that if he lies now, he'll get caught. He asked with great respect to have a chat, warning that he fears for his life soon. Everyone in the kingdom despises the third prince. He lives in a world where enemies surround him everywhere. Ellen cast a wall around them that swallowed every sound. And he did it all on his own, without any chanting at all. After thinking it over, the mage asked the boy if he was trying to escape what's coming or solve the real problem. Callian said the only thing that matters right now is stopping something even worse from happening. If sitting on the throne is the only way to get what he wants, he will take it. Ellen felt right at home with that confidence. A young prince is searching for a wise mentor to help him achieve his dreams. That was so cool, which is exactly why the mage asked to be invited back. The prince knelt before him to introduce himself to his new guide. Once the mage's pride was fed, he promised to rescue the prince. Back with the butler, he asked his dad if anyone knew his true identity, worried that a leak would cause trouble. Siegfried walks with total confidence, yet his son keeps feeling scared. He was curious to learn how Leah had been doing recently. His father said that she is doing great handling the family's internal affairs now that the boy has left that position. Whenever he wants to quit being a butler, he can just walk back in whenever he likes. The Duke heard the boy say they'd meet again in 3 months, and though he knew it meant a long time apart, he nodded in silence. Siegfried took it as his son leaving his current post. The boy whispered that a young master would soon turn 15. His dad asked him if he knew what their family name meant. Everyone calls them the Elephants of Caius. They didn't want the throne, but they're so powerful they rule over all beasts and no one can touch them. After saying that, Siegfried grinned and claimed that their name holds real power. He gave his son the freedom to choose his own path, and the boy's heart swelled with pure joy. He promised that next time he wouldn't make me worry so much. The butler smoothed out his clothes, ready to go back. He gave his father a very formal goodbye, promising they'd see each other again soon. Siegfried grumbled that his son was stubborn, yet he couldn't stop thinking about what the prince had done earlier. If he managed to pull that off, he must have grown up a lot. Now the Duke is eager to find out what the third prince has in mind. The following day, a carriage turned every head. It wore a badge showing 7 red roses and a silver stick. People wondered why that family was visiting Karis, but the answer was clear since they were close friends with the king, and Ellen had just stepped out of her carriage. His young student made it all come true. Last night, they had a conversation about just this very thing. The mage had to get there by 9. You won't find it easy to fight the prison family's power, but now is the time to shake things up for the nobles. The servants of the house greeted the mage with a polite bow and told him the king was already waiting. The king was stunned to see the mage in his meeting, and Ellen asked where she could sleep. To match his wife's strength, the king realizes he needs the mage on his side. It was strange that he arrived first, and this made the king suspicious. The mage told me that the night before, he stumbled upon a tiny black cat with glowing red eyes. He saw how clever the creature was and decided to teach it a few tricks, though he still had no place to rest his head. The king asked what he was going to teach, and the answer was as clear as day: magic. But the surroundings must also help that tiny kitten get better. So the person who owns that land must chip in as well. The king felt a chill of doubt and asked the mage if he could truly do that. Kaelium will become his disciple, and no one can stop it. The king finally agreed to join forces. That spot is already a total mess, so one more thing won't make it any worse. Even so, the king was curious because he'd heard the third son was no different from anyone else. The mage was shocked, since even the boy's strange illness had no clear cause to find. To make matters even worse, the king only speaks of things he's heard from others, acting as if he doesn't even know his own son. The mage asked the father a simple question about the young prince's height, and when the king stayed quiet, the mage knew right away he couldn't answer. Then he warned, too much attention can be poison, while ignoring problems can heal them. But since the mage kept making excuses by claiming he was busy, the king grew annoyed yet decided to let it slide for now. He grumbled that explaining this was a waste of time, yet he insisted the young prince was truly special because he cared so deeply for him. Right as they were about to talk, a magical shield suddenly appeared. Ellen warned the king to pay close attention. The boy looked so sick that his clothes, which he had to rush to alter after losing weight, didn't even fit him properly. He can hardly drag himself out of bed when he wakes up. If the king keeps just watching without acting, he's going to lose the one thing he says he holds so dear. The sun is high and lunch is almost here, but the young prince still hasn't left his room to eat. The butler promised to take care of everything and bring over some tea. Our hero tosses and turns in pain, even when he's trying to sleep. Seeing that, the butler realized the day before must have been a real drag. Then the mage arrived and found the boy still asleep. The mage's arrival startled the butler, but he froze in pure terror when Ellen suddenly popped into view. Sigfagri Jr. lunged forward to keep the mage at bay. He told the mage to let the young man rest since he was very sick, but the mage recognized him immediately because he knew that boy was the baby elephant they had seen years ago. It seems folks have figured out who the butler's dad is. The butler was sure his disguise fooled everyone, yet he was still spotted. Our hero finally opened his eyes, but he had no clue how long he had been asleep. Someone knocked at the door to tell him a visitor had arrived. Callian spotted the mage, who handed the boy a small gift of daily pills. Ellen told us the boy was stuck with two big problems. The first problem was that he couldn't control the power flowing through him. The second thing was that his body was getting much too thin very quickly. Callian was amazed that his teacher could see everything. Alan wondered if the boy truly held the power of the blessing. Callian agreed to help because he needed to heal quicker and gain a stronger bond with magic, but instead, his ability to heal felt completely broken. As curiosity grew, Alan asked the boy if he had ever found that strange before. Healing and magic work together to mend things. On paper, the boy's heart ought to be tough. His teacher said yes, the blessing was still there, and his heart felt fine. His healing power was constantly being drained away somewhere else. That statement left our hero completely stunned. He instantly knew the poison was taking hold, and without his blessing, he would have been dead long ago. The poison was so strong it was pushing his body to the very breaking point. That's why tapping into his magic felt like trying to hold water in a sieve. Our hero realizes that the boy was actually a murder victim who had been secretly poisoned as part of a carefully planned trap. This knowledge makes him burn with fury. Ellen could feel the bad intentions rolling off him. A 14-year-old kid shouldn't be able to do that. Talion was convinced that that tiny pill was the cure. His teacher said he rushed to get it here, but believe me, it's enough. Our hero began to wonder what would happen if he took it while the poison was still in him. His teacher got worried because keeping the poison in his body was dangerous, but the boy already knew who had done it. It had to be that same morning tea. Since everyone saw him drink it, there would be no doubt he took it. Perhaps the boy learned that in his former life, and that knowledge was what made his assassination happen so quickly. Everything has changed completely since then. Kael has to figure out what's happening while keeping his mouth shut. His teacher asked if there was any other way, but the boy had to make sure the tea was really what made him sick. That could get his servants hurt because the criminal does it on purpose, knowing they'll never be found out. Even though the teacher knew who the butler really was and promised safety, he still felt Callion's fear and wanted to figure out what happened next in that mysterious place. The nasty old man told us that to play his final trick, he had to get something first. The next day, Callan asked his teacher to walk outside with him. Some servants were sent off to track down Prince Plch, because the queen wanted to have a look at him. She complained that the boy was terribly late, yet he didn't seem to care in the least. The young man, drunk once more, drank some water and told his mother to just say what she wanted and leave. The queen learned that our hero had found a mentor named Ellen, a powerful mage from the 7th circle. The news was buzzing through the noble houses. PLCH didn't care a bit, but the queen insisted he had to value her investment. It was finally time to get ready. With so many eyes watching the skies, he knew he couldn't let them down. PLCH's face turned red with rage, and he hurled a cup that smashed on the floor. Even with his own wounds fresh and bleeding, he still kicked the servants out of the house. Now he felt more and more annoyed with our boy, who was the reason for his trouble. With the king celebrating his birthday, the whole royal family rode through the capital with his children in tow, sending the people into a wild frenzy of excitement. Everyone in the crowd was desperate to catch a glimpse of Kaelion. The butler asked if he was feeling better, noting that his face finally looked a bit healthier. Kaelion told me he had been getting plenty of rest. Thanks to the antidote he took, he could breathe again and the pain in his heart had vanished. Unfortunately, the day's schedule was so long that the butler began to worry. Even so, the main character felt well enough to watch his people. Deep in the throng, a man tried to slip away unnoticed. Our hero spotted those strange shadows standing in the darkness. He would never forget those people from that night, especially Kiri, who gave herself to protect him while a hooded man vanished into the crowd. Our hero tried to chase after them on his horse, but the butler held him back. Kaelion tried to say he had to chase them away, but they were already gone, and leaving the caravan now would look terrible. He knew for sure he would meet his friend again. When the journey finally ended, a noble came out to greet the king and his family. He announced that he had put on a special show to welcome them back, a grand gesture by Baron Malir, the very man who had planned this trip and caused all that worry for our boy. Years ago, a baron hosted a horse ride that ended with the king's son getting hurt and Malir being hanged. It's a shame to see that polite background character get treated so unfairly. The hall was all set to welcome the guests. Our boy had already spotted the chandelier hanging over the king's party that was about to crash down, and though it was strange the knights hadn't checked it for safety, Kael knew the commander wouldn't be much help. He chose to let that background character live. When the baron stepped closer, Kaelion told him he was worried about the chandelier and ordered it checked right away. That message left the noble head spinning with confusion. The horse raced around the arena. The noble sat by the king like a child. He refused to let this golden opportunity slip away. But then he caught a look on our hero's face and realized he really should have taken a closer look at the ceiling. As the baron took a closer look around, he spotted a rope that had worn out from too much use. The prince's quick warning saved them from disaster. He had been told exactly what was going to happen, just like our hero who had already seen what was coming. Kaelion saw that the noble made wise choices. The question remained why Bryson had stationed so many guards in that spot that a major scene was almost guaranteed. The drunk prince told the noble he didn't know his place. The show kept going in the arena. The drunk prince stared at his hero and cried that he hated his own family. Everyone heard it, which only made our hero feel more driven since he never expected the crazy king from his other life to be so useless. It was time to see just how far the queen would go. She wasn't happy about what happened either, especially since she'd already told her son not to be so foolish. Only when she gazed at her own son did she finally realize he had done it on purpose. But that day was special, with many nobles in attendance. It was time to choose what to do next. The show for the nobles came to a close. The crash they expected never happened. The queen stood silent, as if she hadn't planned a single thing. Perhaps that crash was never part of her secret plan. That same debate had once played out in his past life, too. It might have been pushed by something from outside. Felt like something meant just to be found. It was a straight-up hit on the king himself. Bryson got the biggest advantage from the mess. As we walked away, our hero turned to the butler and asked where the baron had found all that money. He discovered that the man owned a diamond mine. Once the baron is gone from the board, Bryson will grow strong in that market as well. Our hero was piecing the puzzle together, but he chose to keep watching for a bit longer. He figured it was time to put some pressure on the baron. After all, our hero had just saved his life. So he asked the butler to call off everything after the show. He told me that what his brother had said was so intense, it left him shaken. That was his reason for missing the rest of the plan. The king sat in his office, lost in thought about everything that had just happened. After the mage scolded him, the mage's words made him remember the boy's mother and her last moments, until servants cut in to announce the queen had arrived, and one maid offered to bring tea. The queen realized someone had been there before she arrived. The king cut the tea short because he said the queen was about to leave. He cut straight to the chase and asked what had brought her there. She wondered what would happen to Bryson after the event, but she was too worried about how her son was acting to really listen. It could cost him his spot in the line of succession. She cheered for the festival's success and asked that the Baron get a reward. The king saw she already had a plan ready. She smiled as she spoke up about Bryson's special chance to feed horses to the royal family. To the king, she was handing over a vital piece of his kingdom, a fact that only Ellen's words confirmed. Ellen told the queen she wouldn't trade the royal guard because she wasn't desperate, but she'd hand over something precious as long as the king pretended he hadn't expected it. After hearing the proposal, the king promised to join in at the next event. The queen felt a wave of pure joy wash over her. That evening, the king brought his son to dinner to honor the Baron for what he had done that day. The nobles knew the king and queen had struck a bargain, and as Planche's deeds made the hero famous, his room began to overflow with gifts. His rivals were fading away, but he only cared about the Baron's special gifts. He promised to give everything, and the butler didn't have to wait long to find the Baron's gifts. She wore a dazzling necklace lined with bright red stones. It was so huge it seemed built just for a horse. The boy was confused and soon realized that the butler had told the Baron he liked the black horse. That's how he got the necklace, since the Baron was just checking if his heart was in the right place. If he took this gift, another one would come along later. Talion felt the man had no idea how precious his own life was. The jewels weren't enough, so he sent a message to ask how much the necklace was worth before he bought it. The butler didn't get the offer, and our boy said he wasn't even interested. A truly evil plant had caught his eye. It was a strange gift from the Mages Association, but our boy knew it had to be valuable because it came with a letter explaining how to use it. As the plant withers away, it sends its pollen into the air. Our boy looked like he finally got it. He told me the gift would stay in his room until he could try out a wild idea he had. Later, he carefully tipped over the teapot and faked a burnt hand to get away. The butler called over a few maids to tidy it up. Some tea spilled onto the plant, making the butler worry it might get sick. The protagonist shrugged and said it was fine. After all, the tea wasn't poisoned. The maid was so scared by how specific the comment was that she trembled. Standing next to his teacher, our boy gave him a big thank you for all the help he'd received. Thanks to the antidote, Ellen saw our hero looking way healthier and much happier. Ellen also wanted to take a walk just like that, something she hadn't done in a very long time. Callan wondered if the king had given permission, though the king was likely so busy that he probably didn't even know what was happening. Our boy rushed out, leaving a very worried butler behind. The mage leaned in and asked if he was still taking his medicine. Callie promised he'd do exactly what he was told. The poisoner trembled with fear because the deadly plant had been used as bait. The mage was surprised by that clever trick. The little boy's gift had been put to very clever use. Now they had to part ways again because the main character insisted on handling it by himself. The mage's group was just down the street. That is exactly where the teacher would be waiting to help him. Soon they would meet again after the blacksmiths finished their hard work. Our boy received a sharp dagger to protect himself. From now on, it would help if he were attacked. All he wanted now was to learn more. In his past life, he sent several agents out into the field to get the job done. The king of Secretia gave special missions to his trained killers. In a past life, he did the exact same thing. On that dark street, he stood all alone and knew the assassins from his kingdom were deadly. A few drunk guys were walking right up to him. He had to be careful not to show who he really was, or else an attack would come much sooner than planned. The truth was that his strange look made people want him, so he had to be extra careful. He finally stepped into a strange shop that was much bigger than he thought it would be. Inside, the seller asked the boy if he wanted a carrier pigeon, but the boy said no, noting that the birds looked like they were just sleeping soundly. They looked so tired from traveling far that the shop felt like the perfect place for them to rest. As he got more curious, the old man asked what had brought the young man there. Ken said he had to go feed his birds. Before he could even react, he was attacked. The blade sliced near his hood as the old man, suspicious and careful after not selling birds lately, spoke up. Ken quickly saw that this wasn't just any old man. Facing him in that spot would be too tough, so our hero chose to talk things out instead. He explained that the birds he sought had flown away from a distant nest to find food, and since they had never been sold, they were truly wild. The nickname birds belonged to the secret spies who went out to gather secrets. Even the agents guarding secrets didn't know who was out in the field, so no one could accidentally spill the information. The old man wondered if the little boy was just a stray bird looking for a home. Colleen even thought about pretending to be a working bird by using his dad's old name and saying he was sent by Nebula. The old man was left completely stunned by what he saw. Everything seemed fine up until now. Our boy asked for a bite to eat because the bird needs to work. The old man quickly ordered him to follow, leading the boy into a hidden room to reveal that the young man was a new recruit, and that he must remember the old man's code name, White Eagle. Our hero claimed his name was Red Swan. It was time for him to find the answer. For every fact he learned, he had to hand over cash first. Our boy hadn't planned to get in trouble before he even showed what he wanted. But the old man insisted the price was set, even if it felt like a trap. Once he handed over the money, he finally found out what he was looking for. Red Swan peered at the scroll and began to wonder if what he read was truly right. But since that was exactly what the old man was asked to provide, he had no choice but to give it. Before he walked out of the shop, someone warned him to be careful because that place is pretty cruel. Our hero nodded along, convinced that no one was more dangerous than White Eagle himself. On the way back to the castle, our boy spotted a bunch of hooded men. He had to get across that bridge, but he was stuck. He wanted to know what it meant. One man apologized and explained he had to wait while the others made their last trip. Only then did he understand that this was a funeral ceremony. Our boy stepped off his horse to show his respect. In that country, the way people say goodbye is totally different from what we do. They drop red flowers into the river to make sure the lost souls can find their way home. In his former life, they used white flowers that only opened at night to mark the graves, showing that the dead would never meet the living again. Our boy began to wonder if anyone had ever mourned him in a past life, or if time had turned back before that moment. Maybe he was the lost soul who had wandered off into the dark. Someone thanked him for stopping just out of respect. Now he could move on. Back on his horse, he pulled his hood back and whispered a prayer for the soul he had lost. And the man who had stopped him took a close look at his face. His friends noticed he was lost in thought and asked him what was wrong. Arson promised he'd never forget the Prince of Secretia, because that was the truth from his past life. When his friends asked about him, he replied that the young man looked like a good person. Kaelian spotted a bunch of signs with the name Sisfanian and found it a bit much, especially since the last one made him think it was a bar. The tales he told about the city and its followers of Sisfanian were real. A bald man was trying to lead our boy away to a private spot, but Kaelian shouted that he didn't want to go there. He was set on taking the 4th floor of that building. The bald man was instantly shocked and hurriedly offered to show the way. Kaelin found himself alone in the empty hall. He noticed a tiny thing dangling on the wall. When he was with White Eagle, all he wanted was a single piece of information. That's where the shady trades in Caius go down. As soon as he activated that odd thing, a hidden door sprang open in the wall. A hidden stairway led down below, where our boy would sneak away to gather more secrets. Down below, folks were placing bets, but that wasn't what he wanted to find. Hidden away in the dark, the illegal fights were happening. The crowd roared their loudest cheers for the fighters they loved best. The first match was over, and Stoneface walked away as the winner. As the loser was dragged away, the winners finally got their money. The air was thick with the scent of blood, marking the place where normal people lost their kindness to enjoy cruelty. To our boy, the whole thing felt gross and utterly hopeless. Someone walked up to him and asked for his money to let him in. Right then, Kaelin spotted a girl with silver hair. It seemed she couldn't speak, but she was pointing the way for him. He saw that her ears had been cut off and she looked uncomfortable in those clothes. Those girls wore trackers around their necks so they couldn't run away. But the silent girl pointed again at the number 27. She looked like she wanted a bet placed right now, so he melted into the crowd until he could get what he came for. The rule was easy. Win your bet and get your cash quickly. Our little boy ended up with a whole lot of money. A few men began chatting about it. It was time to face a challenger who had never lost a single fight. For now, the guy he was fighting was still a rookie. That was the person Kelly had been searching for. The one who once said he was trapped fighting to survive until his sister died. Even though it was the Knight Kiri, he remained a slave and a gladiator, the true prize Kellyan had been searching for. Kellyan didn't hesitate a moment. He bet all his money on that fighter, leaving the silent girl staring in shock. It was a dangerous gamble that left everyone staring in shock, convinced the boy was crazy, and they weren't wrong. So far, Kiri hasn't managed to win a single thing. An old gambler claimed that what our boy did was totally reckless. You didn't want to risk all your chances on someone who had never won before. But our boy simply wouldn't move. He whispered to the silent girl that she had to make sure the bet went through. After that, the old gambler listened to his heart and warned the rookie that the fight would be a total disaster. Even trapped inside the cage, Kiri finally understood what had gone down. The unbeatable fighter warned that Crazy Better was about to lose it all. The chains that bound them suddenly fell apart. The fight had hardly begun when Kiri was already thrown into defending against wild, crushing attacks. Every block felt almost as bad as getting hit clean. The gladiator hit Kerr right in the stomach so hard that the warrior spat out blood. Now the hero began to feel nervous. He knew Kiri wasn't a real threat without her sword, but he still trusted in that fierce fighter's hidden potential. The old knight's blows weren't quick enough. He felt the weight pressing down on him inch by inch. There was no way to escape the beating. Just as the final hit was about to slam into his face, the hero yelled at Kori not to leave his shoulder open to the enemy's strike. The gladiator dodged a blow to his head, found an opening, and crushed the other man's ribs, proving they weren't made of rubber, turning the fight into a painful dental nightmare before everyone was shocked to see him win for the first time. No one could ever figure out how it happened. It shouldn't have been able to happen. As desperate cries filled the air from those who lost their money, Kiri turned to look at our boy. Kaen couldn't hold back his big smile. Suddenly, a suspicious bald man stepped forward and told our boy that someone wanted to see him, so they had to go with him. In a quiet room, someone whispered that our boy had real talent. He turned 3 coins into a staggering 6,000, leaving the betting house in deep trouble. That man absolutely refused to give him a single penny. He guessed they were about to offer a deal, but they turned out to be even dumber than they looked, so the mobster asked what the boy could possibly give them in return. Our hero warned that taking off his hood would bring disaster upon him. The mobster didn't believe a word of the warning. It was time to rip that hood off by force, but one of the mobster's hands was violently pierced. That got our boy curious and made him ask what was happening. He didn't realize he was actually speaking with dangerous criminals. That was the moment they knew they were facing a madman. To their relief, our boy told them he didn't want the money. He chooses to take the gladiator Kiri home instead. The mobster wasn't happy because the slave was starting to make money, but he quickly saw that if he said no, trouble was coming fast. He began to think it would be easy to find out what that boy could get his men to do. With a cut so vicious it showed everyone who was really in charge, the protagonist made his point. He said he'd take the coins, and if he got in trouble, he'd even take that man's life too. It was time for the mobster to make his choice. Once that aura attack hit, the answer became clear. He shouted for his men to drag Kiri into the room right away. He had no idea that the whole thing was just a trick. Our boy couldn't pull off that hit again. His weak body couldn't take it. A thug warned that trouble was coming. Kiri refused to move until his sister walked right beside him. Our hero finally remembered the rest of the tale. The knight had lost something precious in that place. Callan began to show his impatience. The mobster hurried up his work, promising they'd be ready to vanish in a flash. Our boy thrust his hand forward in a scary, threatening gesture. He wanted his money back, the price he paid just to walk through the door. Now that they were back in the dark alley, Kori felt a little worried. By a strange twist, it turned out his sister was the girl who couldn't speak. They thanked our hero for his help, but they couldn't figure out why he had done it. Callan handed his cloak to the girl and asked them not to be suspicious, since he had no bad intentions at all. That was the moment his face was spotted, the face of the third prince. Kiri felt bad for doubting someone so important and said sorry. Our boy told him not to bow his head like that because they didn't have to do it in front of him. Those 2 siblings, who were part elf, knew their short and doomed lives had already been sealed. Seizing the moment, our boy pointed out that showing his shoulder like that is something fencing beginners always do. Now the only question left was if Kiri had the heart to become a knight. The young man declared he wished to be a protective blade for those he loved, rather than a knight in armor. Our boy explained that the first thing he had to do was act as his own shield. If he was determined to follow that dangerous path, he should come find him, so he handed the young man a sword. Kari still had no idea why someone gave him something so important. Kael grinned and said he needed a really sharp sword. It was time for him to pay back every single thing he had ever gotten in his past life. Ellen was thinking back on how our boy had just saved that baron's life. The prince knew that the big glass light hanging from the ceiling was about to crash down. Our boy set out to find his master. Ellen asked if he'd gotten into trouble because some of his clothes were gone. The young boy whispered that something strange had taken place, but it wasn't a fight. His teacher knew it had to be a really hard job. Kael confessed that it had been a terribly long day. He finally found his knight and set a trap to catch the one poisoning him. Even so, he was still terrified. Perhaps he had tried to do too much in too little time. With magic helping her, Ellen started pouring some tea. Our boy finally declared the room looked just like a wizard's office. His teacher asked if he had been expecting that strange soup made from monster meat. And honestly, Callan had been hoping to see something much more amazing. The room was plain, but a bare dagger stuck in the wall felt like a wild and odd decoration. But the boy soon figured out what that tool was. Ellen asked the prince why he was there, since that spot wasn't supposed to be in his room. With just a tiny wiggle of his fingers, the dagger began to slide right toward the boy. A little blood splashed onto the floor. Ellen saw that despite his broken body, our boy's quick reactions were still sharp. He tried to protect himself, but he pushed himself too hard. That magical tool crafted by Sphanian can copy the secret weapon of your opponent. It was basically a warning. Our boy figured out the attack was just a scare. Ellen saw with his own eyes that the boy not only knew how to wield a sword but could also use aura. From the very first moment he saw him, he knew their meeting was strange, yet even stranger and more ridiculous things kept happening. The boy turned out to be a total surprise, not at all like the person they thought he was. When he found out he was being poisoned, fear vanished and was replaced by pure anger. After what happened with the Baron, it was time for him to finally tell his teacher the truth. Ellen poured her healing magic into the boy's broken body. His teacher probably already knew who he was, but she was just hoping to believe his story. Our hero told us he wasn't Callan. His true name was Baron Secretia. I never thought he'd break the golden rule that every regressor story follows. Now the two of them spoke more about the artifact known as the Axis of Time. It looked like the real Callan was truly gone, but the professor wasn't certain if our hero even knew that. He could still feel that someone else was there. He wasn't sure before because everything felt so mixed up. Helen recalled their very first meeting, when our boy boldly asked for a place higher than the royal throne. Ellen's curiosity got the better of her, and she simply had to know what it was. Callian stepped forward and declared he had to stop the war before it could begin. He had no idea why Panch hunted the Axis of Time, but he knew that if the source of the trouble wasn't stopped, the same mistakes would happen all over again. Ellen wondered if our boy wanted to act because he truly wanted to, or just because his brother Chase wanted him to. They had to solve the puzzle. Chase was the sole heir to the other kingdom. In this world, no one was ever named Baron. The news left our boy stunned. He foolishly wondered how he could disappear from this timeline, not realizing that he was standing right here, alive and well. Even so, the boy tumbled into a strange existential crisis, convinced that something had gone wrong, perhaps because of the artifact's power. He tried to figure out why he was in this body as he felt the old Callian slowly slipping away. Our boy even wondered if someone had moved into the empty body he used to have, and since two versions of him couldn't occupy the same space, he realized he must have taken over the real Cal's body. His teacher told Chase that he was already getting ready to become the new king. The future of this world was shifting right before our eyes. The third Prince of Qs didn't worry, because Chase would follow his own story. Baron knew it was time to let go of the past and move on. He knew his teacher was worried, but he was ready to show that her fears were wrong. When he woke up in that land, he finally shed everything that kept him empty inside. Words so heavy they left Elon speechless. Now the protagonist stepped forward to ask if his teacher was all right. After hearing everything, Elon was confused and still didn't grasp why his students were so worried. From the very start, he had joined forces with just one person, our boy. Outside, Kellyan wondered if his teacher already knew about the Axis of Time. He seemed to know something from the way he reacted. Alan mentioned that something had happened last year. Chase asked him the exact same thing. All he knew was that this strange object wasn't made by human hands. A month ago, he found out the item had vanished from the kingdom, maybe on the very day our boy changed. That news made Callian feel a little scared. He couldn't figure out why the artifact had disappeared, but there was someone who knew and was about to meet the prince. Ellen pointed to the statue of Sphanian, and our boy finally understood that his coming-of-age ceremony was about to begin. Rosalita is the time when the royal family must find Sphanian's empty nest and talk to her inside. But to survive the journey, he must first uncover who is trying to poison him. Kael thinks that by itself, this one thing should have already gotten someone caught. He returned to his room to take a closer look at the plant. Even though the butler was scared, everything happened just like the protagonist had planned. Now it was time to hunt down something truly awesome. As he marched straight to the terrace, the butler asked why they'd go out into the freezing cold. That flower he had gotten as a present. As it dies, its pollen drifts through the air, and very few people realize that it can do this. Everyone watched as the tea was poured out in plain sight. Callan kept a sharp eye on every face in the room. It was a deadly poison that should have killed the plant and anyone who touched it, yet they both lived. And yet, it looked completely healthy, as if someone had swapped the specimen, and finally the butler figured out what was happening. Tiny grains of pollen floated through the air from that plant. The trail pointed straight to the palace in Hesha, where the queen lived, leading the protagonist right to the hidden plant and the person who stole it. The main character gazed out the window as the rain poured down. The butler crept forward, stunned to find the boy grinning with perfect health after asking if he'd slept well. A greeting he certainly wasn't used to. The boy admitted that he had woken up early. The butler had never seen such a thing, so the boy watched the cup of tea very closely. As he took a sip, he realized the drink didn't taste like it always did. Celise pushed the poison dose higher. The boy wondered if the nobles were planning any big gatherings that week. The butler said there would be a big meeting next week, followed by a huge feast, the perfect chance to finally stop drinking that poison. Right after drinking the tea, the protagonist swallowed the antidote, which left the butler wondering what was going on. He asked what it was, and the boy said it was just vitamins. With his strength fading, he should take them, so the butler paused thoughtfully, staring at the teacup. The entire situation left him feeling deeply unsettled. After the horse presentation, Blanche decided to stop coming to breakfast. For the hero, that was a wonderful thing. It cleared the clutter from his busy day so he could move forward. Colleen used his brother's presence to convince them that the flowers would soon bloom. The room grew quiet again, and the blonde boy chose to walk away. The butler then asked the boy why he had raised that point. Callan mentioned seeing some roses while he was walking, which made him remember that Randall used to grow them. There was no secret message hidden inside it. Later that day, the hero worked out a little more. His body kept failing him, and he knew that if he stopped training, he would fall apart even quicker. He still had no idea how his master managed to appear there. But the teacher told us he had already talked to the king. That made the boy ask 2 questions, wanting to know who the 2 people were. He made it easy for his master. The next task was to look into the nobles, particularly the Brisson family, whose involvement his teacher had already suspected. That was easy enough, but the boy kept bossing his master around with a dozen commands. Talion warned that the poison was now even stronger. He had finally found the one who did it. Even the teacher had a strong feeling about who it was. It would be tough to hide that from a powerful mage. Because it was such a big deal, Ellen found the perfect chance to grow her power. The mage thought he was just a shield, but the boy saw him as a weapon. He still remembered his past life where the enemy was an army made only of mages. Kael dreamed of leading a battalion made entirely of those same soldiers in the days to come. The teacher was curious but warned that mages weren't knights and were very hard to teach. Yet the hero insisted it could be done, leaving the teacher thinking hard about it. Roma was overlooked when he came up with that idea because everyone said it couldn't work. Yet somehow he managed to pull it off. Yet he passed away just a short while later in a way that didn't make sense. The Mage Corporation truly grew into a flying army that Plains now commanded. Now things were different, since the Bryson family wouldn't stand in the boy's way, as he planned to use the poison tea to negotiate with Queen Sis. Ellen wondered how they could actually make that happen. All the boy could say was that big changes were coming fast. The teacher felt uneasy because things seemed so unclear. The boy tugged at the secret tucked in his sleeve and said, "Use this only when the queen messes up." Then the real talking would finally start. Even though the maid hidden in the room added more poison to the drink, the queen was still so angry she couldn't stop. She was drowning in gossip that made her furious. A person walked up to the 2 of them. The queen's son was just another tool she used to get what she wanted. He came to tell her not to worry, but she said he wasn't capable of making decisions. And even though she tried her best, the pain never stopped. PLCH marched away, feeling completely useless. The queen spotted her son was weak, so she began clearing the path for him to become king. On the day of the palace celebration, Kiri saw her sister jump out of bed feeling wonderful. She was just as thrilled, using sign language to tell everyone they were about to see the prince. The girl felt a warm crush on the hero and couldn't wait for the party that day. Callian dressed himself up in his royal robes to meet with the nobles. With just an hour to go before everything began, the protagonist turned to his butler with a favor to ask. The moment had come to finally put an end to this. The tea was brought right to the weakest prince. At last, the boy stood face to face with the queen. From this moment on, everything would be different, with the butler already riding his horse outside. He carried 2 envelopes, one for Ellen and one for the Mages Guild, but he had to drop the second one off first, and his worry grew as his lord headed to the banquet all alone. The boy told the butler to stay calm, saying he would handle things his own way. But putting those words into action was a whole different story. Something like this has happened before. Even though he was terrified that disaster was about to happen, the butler refused to lose hope. Inside the Mags Association, a woman had already prepared a massive amount of information, said Arya, the president of that city's association. But because it wasn't shown until now, it felt all wrong. Ellen was convinced that political power was to blame. As Arya grew more curious, she wondered just how the prince would use those strange materials. Right then, the butler walked into the group and, seeing Ellen there, realized his job had suddenly become much easier. He finally handed over the letters the boy had written. Ellen was already packing to head straight to the big feast. The butler shook his head and said he couldn't step inside unless someone invited him in first. That's when the mage warned that the hero might not make it to the next day. In his letter, Callan promised to strike a bargain with the queen, offering his very life in exchange. If anything went wrong, Ellen had to fix it. Just an hour ago, the talk started. Callan stepped up and told the queen that they had to be honest. She said yes, yet deep down she wasn't sure anything would actually change. Callan told her to watch her manners because her overconfidence was getting the best of her. Thinking he just wanted to argue, the queen stood up, disappointed that she'd only have a few minutes of entertainment. Before she walked away, Kalyan told her he already knew the tea was poisoned. He demanded the food be taken away, calling it disgusting. The queen was shocked by the accusation and claimed she didn't understand, but the boy knew exactly what to say next, so she wouldn't get away with it again. He brought a little container. Inside lay a poison that could make your heart stop for a few seconds. It stays calm around silver and slips right past any magic that tries to find it. Though the boy's blessing kept his heart untouched, the poison still found a way to spread through his body. The protagonist began by asking, who would they suspect first? While the queen started laughing as if she had completely lost her mind. She told the boy things wouldn't go his way because she'd done this before. She even admitted it was her who took the protagonist's mother's life. That made the boy so mad he demanded to know what to do with that tea. The queen told him to wash it all down. As the boy lifted the cup, he whispered that her words would count as a refusal. That made the woman smile, sure that no one could ever guess her secret, not even the king himself. Sis thought she could grab whatever she wanted in that kingdom, which is exactly how she ended up with the throne. All she needed to do was clear the path blocking her way. But there was still one thing she hadn't figured out, so she kept working hard to make it happen. The hero began coughing violently after swallowing the poison, until his body gave out and he crumpled to the floor, too weak to stand. The king and his brothers froze in terror when they saw the boy. As they shouted for a healer, the queen just smiled at the mess. Chaos erupted at the banquet as guests whispered that someone might have poisoned the prince, though no one could be sure, leaving the nobles frozen in silence while the air grew heavy with the threat of deadly suspicion. Sis felt a surge of awe at how powerful she really was. No one had the courage to call her guilty of anything. The king hurried over to the boy, desperate to help. He scooped him up into his arms and pleaded for him to stay awake. The boy tried to speak through his struggle, and the sight of him made the king remember his late wife and her final promise that he would protect their son. That memory stays with you, never to be forgotten. Amidst the chaos, Sis declared she was heading back to her own palace. The king was so angry that he demanded to know if she had done it. She screamed his name so loudly that everyone could hear it. The whole room fell quiet as everyone stood stunned at the banquet. The queen stared in total shock at what she saw. Now the nobles finally began to realize that something was wrong. She hid her face behind her fan and said she didn't get the accusations, claiming the boy was always sick. That only made the king furious, for it was the very thing she had claimed would happen when the queen passed away. Years later, she called every knight in the kingdom together, and the same thing happened again. Sayas pounced on the fact that the protagonist had been a sickly child as a child. She quickly mentioned that the second prince had been there at breakfast. When the king told the woman to be quiet after hearing her claims, she boldly replied that she was only worried about his children. She spoke to the boy like he was her own son, and that only made the king angrier. Suddenly, a voice from the crowd spoke up. Plant told me his brother was doing fine and never felt anything was wrong with his health. He even recalled the protagonist once assuring him that everything was fine. Finally, the priest came to check on the boy. After being humiliated by her own son, Silas fled the banquet, only for the priest's healing magic to be blocked by an unexpected barrier set up by the boy's teacher. It seemed like he had just stepped in right when the knight turned the most important corner. Ellen says that would kill the boy. The king's fear grew so deep that he knew his son needed help right now. Then they were told that the boy held a magic circle within his heart, filled with holy power. He would end up with nowhere left to turn. The king grew more and more desperate. Ellen explained that only a nature mage could pull it off, but trying to do it with magic alone was just impossible. Even the boy's teacher was reliving scary memories from the past. His own son had faced the same terrifying thing. It felt like the scene was playing out over and over again for him. His student was about to lose his life. The look on his face was the exact same one his son had worn once. Ellen never thought she'd have to cast the painless spell again, but now the target feels absolutely nothing. The name of that witchcraft was obtundant. Once you left the city, little leaflets began to drift down from the sky. The dark truth behind the Breeson family, who killed 37 people. It sparked outrage, and the people demanded revenge for what the queen had done to the boy. The rumors made everyone crazy with excitement. Ellen told the king that they had to build a company for the magicians. They had to turn the tables by proving the queen was the one who committed the crime. And just by chance, he had been thinking about starting a company for mages. Silas waited to talk to the boy, not knowing when they'd have a chance to prepare for something like that. To her surprise, the hero had made it through unharmed. Even after a week of fighting for his life, he was still so weak, yet he pushed himself to the limit just to prove he was strong, not broken. For some reason that no one could explain, they started talking to each other again. The boy told her that her time was up. A week later, the queen had softened and was ready to hear new ideas, but Talion smirked, telling Celis she'd forgotten something key. It was no use asking her permission any longer. Celis, furious, demanded to know what he wanted. He called for the Knights of Pel, signaling it was finally time to send that military force packing. The queen was terrified because it was her most powerful weapon. To move forward, Sis had to leave behind her own personal guard. He summoned his butler, Siegfried Jr., who arrived carrying important papers, a contract promising the queen would keep her word, and a deadly clause stating she would die if she broke it. Magic could crush the heart of anyone who disobeyed. The second prince returned to his roses and discovered that the queen had rushed to speak with Kael the moment he woke up. Just as Clean faded into darkness, he caught one last glimpse of his brother's eyes. Our boy had promised the flowers would bloom, proving it was all part of the plan. Now that he knows what actually bloomed, the second prince is thinking about joining forces. Even Planche can see our boy is back on his feet. As things shift rapidly, Celisai refuses to take that magical oath. For Kael, the only way to deal with her is to show real consequences. He sits quietly, holding his breath until she finally speaks the words he's been waiting to hear. After thinking it over, furious, Celisai grabbed a quill to sign the contract. Magic rushed through her body, proving the deal was truly done. This is just the perfect moment for our hero before she walks away. Kael admits he never got along with his brothers and that Planche didn't take his side just to help him. He never realizes how much he's missing until he truly understands it. If the king had heard even one more bold word, his sword would have chopped off the man's head without a second's thought. After a long quiet moment, Sissy finally left, and Ellen hurried to see the disciple who had just woken up, especially after hearing that the queen had been there. He didn't take long to see Callan was starving and happily munching on several bananas, and our boy said he did his part and is glad about it. Ellen told them they were lucky. Just as the clock struck the perfect moment, the half-elf brothers and sisters rolled into town. That girl draws her healing magic straight from nature. Callan took a huge gamble, even admitting he wasn't ready for the amazing power Hina showed. That left Kael speechless, as he never knew she died young in his past life either. That just made Ellen even angrier because the boy's plan was so dangerously foolish. Even so, Ellen gave Callan the thing he had asked for. The elf siblings needed an official last name, so Ellen picked Baron, the old name of our hero. That little thing made our boy so happy. Turning them into citizens made that whole place so much better. But Ellen admitted that the idea really belonged to Roma. People are whispering that the king holds him in high regard, and these rumors are growing stronger every day. Callan understood that someone else should have felt that way later. As he thought, our boy asked the butler for more bananas, but Siegfried Jr. had something serious to say. He knows he can't keep serving as the butler forever. Now, the story flashes back to the butler. He's on his way to meet his brother, who looks incredibly weak and is wrapped in bandages. They talk about the birds' noisy morning songs. In the summer, the older brother, barely holding on, asked Siegfried Jr. to play the violin for him later. The butler caught a few words from the grown-ups chatting nearby. His brother was getting sicker and sicker every day. Back then, he didn't truly grasp what it felt like to be locked out of something or to know you'd never get a chance at it. Eventually, his brother finally pushed him to tell the real story. They asked if he was going to die from that sickness. Then suddenly, a fire broke out right there. They had to grab what they could and flee before time ran out. The trouble started because of the butler's older brother. That was how he chose to walk away from a life filled with hurt. The cold winter finally gave way to a summer filled with singing birds. Yet everything had changed forever. Siegfried couldn't watch his son sit alone any longer, so he grabbed him and pulled him out of the room. That's when the butler spotted a small boy standing in the square. He is the nation's third prince, our very own hero. That was the day the butler decided to take his job seriously. He told our boy everything, but even though he was close to him, our boy still didn't know what had happened. Even worse, the very hands meant to help were the ones that slipped him the poison. He felt terrible because he knew nothing about it. Callan nearly died, and he won't let it happen again. Callan yelled to snap the dozing butler awake. First, he asked him to say who he is looking at right now. Since he is the main character, we know he won't meet his end. The butler has always stood right beside him. Callie can't afford to lose his banana peeler now, because with it, he's managed to get through everything so far. One thing our boy knows for sure. He knows the butler is someone he can count on for anything. Siegfried Jr. is crying like a scared child. realizing he can't go home because he's found someone he will protect for the rest of his life. After gathering his strength, he vowed to hunt down every person who tried to harm our hero. Kalyan warned him that if he wants revenge, he'd better keep his mouth shut because elephants are too loud. The butler tried to take it back, promising he wouldn't cause a scene until he figured out the word Kalyan used for him. The word elephant told Kalyan that he already knew everything. The butler pressed him on when he found out the truth, but our boy just dodged the question. At least they went back to acting normal, leaving everything behind them. Our boy was suddenly pulled into a deep, quiet moment where he watched the man who used to live in this body walk the same path ahead of him, heading somewhere unknown. It felt like a quiet thank you and a final goodbye. Kalyan falls away from that strange moment until he finally wakes up in his own room. He held a morning ceremony, lighting a candle to honor the old Kalyan, who is gone for good. The old call told us our boy looked like he was in a rush. He gave him this life, yet he still wished our hero could get what he truly wants. For the old Kalyan, life felt like a prison, making our young boy jealous of the freedom he must now enjoy. But so many things have already happened, and he can't just quit now. Our hero chose to make his second chance count. The Knights of Pable broke up and went back to Bryson just as news of the Mage Company was finally shared. After 3 months, our servant heroes decided they had to summon the Tor because our boy had grown so much. As Roma approached the king, she gasped at just how tall the young man really was. Everyone is getting things ready for Rosalita because it's Kalyan's birthday. Ellen mentioned that he had a mage, his disciple, to bring in to keep him safe during the ceremony. Arson stepped forward to introduce himself and admitted he felt honored to carry that heavy responsibility. Kalyan nearly jumped out of his skin just seeing him. Roma told me he's a top-notch mage from the corporation simply because he's so talented. Our boy is happy about the big surprise but is also struggling to keep his anger from showing. The Mage Corporation is just about ready to open its doors. But for now, they still need a name and plenty of tweaks to get things right. Even with the meeting going on, Kalyan can't take his eyes off Arson. Ellen asked the king if he had a name suggestion for it, since he'd been thinking about something like this for a while and he did. Vokkan's reply came so quickly that Ellen felt a wave of relief, glad he had spoken before he could suggest anything on his own. Our boy is eager to hear what Arkan thinks. The mage stared at the question with a puzzled look until Kalyan stepped in to say he was asking about the name Vokkan. Arkan still held a bit of caution, but he admitted the name was good, which is exactly why it was picked. Later, our boy whispered everything that ever happened with Arkan to Ellen using a silence spell. Even though Arkan took his life, we don't need to switch out the guards right now. Things started to shift and so did the people. Even then, our boy still holds a deep grudge over what happened. The man who came to visit our boy was Baron Malir. It's been a long time since we last met. Our boy said sorry for going quiet, but Malir feels truly honored just to be talking to the third prince, since he hasn't spoken with any noble before. But our boy cut right to the chase. He arrived to claim his reward for saving the man's life. The Baron knew exactly what was coming. He's been swapping diamonds and horses with the imperial family, yet the prince is eager to hear something different. Malir admitted he still had nothing to give, and that made Callie smile. Our boy asked if the noble could run a different kind of business, and Melior said he had the people and resources to make it happen. Turns out Bryson has that same issue as well. The Baron was baffled because he thought he had caught Callie, but Kalyan just said it so plainly that it caught him off guard. Our boy grinned and agreed, while Kalyan revealed his plan to build a mage unit since they have the people and supplies, they just need someone to run it. Malir wondered if that was the price he had to pay for his life. Our boy said yes, and that is the price he wants. Full of loyalty, Malir stands ready to report for duty to someone who was supposed to have died long ago. Kael didn't just change everything. He now has a circle of people he can truly trust. The only thing left to do is find Safanian at the ceremony and ask him why all this is going on. As Kalyan blew out the candles on his birthday cake, he noticed that everything had been perfectly planned. Even that annoying brother is showing up again, even though they haven't really talked in a long time. As Kalyan walks away, Planch yells, "You blood-eyed fool! Our boy named Kalyan has had enough of that and won't put up with it anymore." To his surprise, Planchi explained that the rider wasn't Kalyan, who rides horses, wields swords, and refuses to be spoken to. Plans is desperate to find out who he truly is. Kalyan also needs to remember he isn't Baron anymore and that Planch isn't the crazy king he once knew. First, he must wait a bit longer to hear from Sisfanian about what truly happened. He glanced at his brother and told him he had plenty of wild ideas. Ellen thought Planch might be an alcoholic, but since he isn't stupid, it makes sense that he found the situation strange. As time went on, Kalyan knew his brother's doubts were getting stronger. They have to face that problem head-on. Ellen told him that from now on, he was Kaelin and no one else. And that is exactly what our hero chose to do. It's still hard to look past the fact that he used to be empty. The mage flung a ring at his student, telling him to catch it so they could talk whenever he needed advice. Sifanian's power ruins his magic inside the castle, but once they step outside, everything works just fine. Ellen also told him that everyone in that hall was part of his family. Commander Yon stepped forward to introduce himself as the man leading Siegfried's crew, promising to keep Kellyan safe all the way to Sifanian's nest deep within their own land. They are truly amazing, yet they can't stand that their young master works as a butler. Siegfried Jr. stopped to ask her son if he needed anything before they set off on their journey. With all the knights watching, Kellyan told the butler to bring him a drink. To make things even worse, the butler asked if he preferred tea. Once Kellyan made his choice, the butler asked him to hold on for just a minute. Kellyan clearly saw that those knights were deeply troubled by it. Ellen simply can't figure out why his student seems to make enemies on purpose while walking through the city. This ceremony feels so special and rare that the great caravan is finally ready to roll away. Planche keeps his eyes locked on everything around him, never missing a beat. The queen isn't joining them, but she sits deep in thought. Our boy is off on a journey, and his master has given the go-ahead. The Rosalita ceremony has only just started. Now that the king knows what has happened lately, he is scared for his son's safety. Ellen told us not to worry too much. Roma thought the mage's calm confidence sounded odd, and since he claimed nothing special was said, the king grew even more worried. Kael glanced at the ringing device, and seeing silence, he knew his master must be deep inside the palace. The more the butler tries to be helpful, the angrier the knight gets. Siegfried Jr. had already spoken about it. Since Kael can't cast magic and his sword skills aren't top-notch, the knights must be extra careful to protect the young prince, who is practically a helpless child. That just makes the knights even more mad. They're waiting for young Master Sigf to give up this humble work soon. There are still 3 more hours of traveling ahead for them. The butler told them to take a break. But right then, everyone froze and got ready for trouble. Kellyan realized this wasn't the right kind of situation. Out of the forest's middle, a girl popped out asking for help. She isn't just a normal human, she's an elf. Once safe, she whispered her name was CIA and told me she was starving. She had been hiding deep within the forest. Kellyan felt that his first meeting with her was truly weird. The commander looked around and asked what everyone should do next. Kellyan gave the order to feed the girl. He also mentioned that if she was being chased, she should have told him sooner. A mysterious figure cloaked in shadow rides a steed toward us. Kellyan draped a hood over the girl and ordered them to hide her away. As the stranger stepped nearer, they finally asked, "Who are you?" The man claimed he was hot on the heels of a thief. The commander claimed no strangers were with them, but the man saw right through it and spotted the child they were hiding. He told the knights he wasn't looking for trouble and asked if he could take a look. Kellyan asked his friend to describe the person he was hunting for. The wanderer claimed it was a young elf, so Kellyan told him to look for her. As the girl froze in panic, the wanderer stepped right toward her. As he walked past Kellyan told him not to look back and to watch carefully. 2 people were hiding in the shadows, watching but not there to help at all. Their deadly focus is locked right on the wanderer and the child. As soon as he knew where she was, the arrows flew, and the wanderer looked back in fear just to see them already coming. Our hero froze them all in midair, shouting a warning to the wanderer never to look back. The fear of an ambush snapped the knights into battle-ready mode. Arson built a shield around the protagonist to keep them safe. At least he's good for that kind of work, even though Kion doesn't like him. The arrows finally stopped flying, which meant the attackers had to have run away. Arson promised to look after the child and asked Kiri to help out with our boy. Kiri stepped up to see the wanderer about to slash the young prince's head, but our hero blocked the strike with ease and used magic to slam the attacker to the ground. The knights never dreamed that our boy was useless. It seems the prince can do much more than anyone thought possible. The butler looked so scared he started yelling at our boy. He could have taken a terrible beating. He claimed our young hero was terrible with both sword and spell, but the knights who watched him fight completely disagree. A useless person simply couldn't have hurt the wanderer that easily. After that, it was time to speak with the little elf. When asked what she stole, she claimed that Luca did it and insisted she had nothing to do with it. Kellyan can't question the kid. Her face showed she was terrified, so he called Arkin to help. It's up to him to make sure he understands every single word the elf says. After a quick grilling, Arkin looked completely drained. Salace lives in the Harissa forest and journeys alongside Luca. It looks like he grabbed something from those men. As they ran to get away, the 2 of them ended up losing each other. And on top of that, the girl jumps right in with her answer before anyone even has time to ask a question. She can't explain why it happens, and while it feels like she's seeing the future, She insists it isn't really that. Arson has the hard task of watching over the kid. Callan plans to drop her off at the next forest so they can move faster, leaving the local lord to figure out what happened. Right then, the commander stepped up to talk to our boy. Something weird is going on with those wandering things, and when he showed the artifact to Kael, she was shocked. But our boy knows exactly what it is. That's the poison he's swallowed every single day for so long. Now, he wants to question that wanderer himself. Now that he's locked up, the wanderer admitted he'd mistaken our hero for a young noble, but realized he was wrong. Callie told him that he was even more special than he had ever imagined. He showed us a tiny bit of the poison and said he isn't going to keep asking for an answer. He desperately wants to know the truth, so he asks the wanderer if they know what it is. The wanderer whispered that everyone had a little bit of it, and since he thought it was useful, he snatched a few pieces for himself. Our boy asked who those people were hunting. The wanderer shrugged, admitting he couldn't tell who was who since everyone was hiding behind masks. That thought stuck with Callie, leaving her lost in deep reflection. The wanderer speaks with an open heart, showing no sign of hiding the truth or shielding anyone. But if our boy can solve this mystery, he might be able to help the man, who is the precious son of an influential family. The wanderer told us that his wife is in Hansen village and those folks know exactly where to find her. Callie promised to keep her safe no matter what happened. He also discovered that those men had scattered tiny marble pebbles, no bigger than a fingernail, all around. He also heard that a priest needed to check them. You thought this might be a sacred relic hunted by the priests of Tensel, so if they lost something precious, they must be worried. Now the real mystery is why they keep that poison. Secret agents use this so they stay safe if they get caught. The wanderer also mentioned hearing them call their leader Blue Knight an ale. The code name sounded so strange to our hero, like finding a bird named after his dad hiding right nearby. A sudden downpour drenched the ground and forced our hero to stop moving forward. So he was forced to halt in the Latland lands, a place he truly did not care for. The master of that land was so drunk with joy that he couldn't stop himself from welcoming our hero. Hail, a gift from heaven, was the only thing that made him serve the third prince. The butler asked our young friend if he still remembered Count Hale. He had sent our boy a gift before, one of the ones that got returned. He once stood by Prince Randall, but then he changed his mind and backed Planche instead. Our boy looks at him like he's just climbing the social ladder. Hale said he couldn't even get some rest after hearing rumors that our boy was in the area. Even the Count's own butler felt a bit sheepish about the whole thing. Arson had to stop the meeting to share something important with the hero. He whispered in the shadows that they had finally caught the messenger bird. Our boy knew they'd try to reach out to the Blue Nightingale, but the rain ruined their plans. Hale poured a drink for the mage, but the mage shook his head no. Then Kael asked if any priests of Tensel were around. Hale dropped the wine bottle because he fumbled it. He flew into a rage, shouting that the priests were arrogant liars who said the land was dead. So our boy knew it was useless to try to reason with him anymore. With the tiny bit of magic he had, he made that lord fall into a deep sleep. Our boy was so mad that Hale's words really got under his skin. Callan spoke through the ring to warn his master that he was caught up in stealing a holy treasure and now faced danger. But trusting what he remembered from his last life, our hero is sure it's okay. Blue Nightingale has never failed a mission before, so she must already know he's the third prince. They have to check out the location and find some priests to figure out what the spy is up to. The little bar down the street felt nearly deserted. Our hero stepped inside, claiming the crowd outside had caught up with him. She told him not to worry, explaining that she's simply not cruel enough to hurt anyone without a reason. Callan admitted he feared their caravan had been targeted because people knew who he was and who the boy was, but the wanderer refused to listen to his fears. That's when our boy realized there were hardly any living souls left in that bar. Blue Nightingale told us that people often act without thinking. Kian asked if she was part of it now. At first, the woman was ready to say yes, but seeing our boy, she felt the chill of a seasoned killer and nearly reached for her knife, only to realize it wouldn't be a simple thing to do. Our boy is wondering if the elf he's chasing is still breathing. The forest swallowed his trail, leaving them lost. She wasn't happy with how things were going, so since the enemies took very little damage, she told our hero to get out and said she'd take care of the child alone. Ken isn't ready to agree until he gets some answers to his questions. First, they are hunting for a sacred relic even though she isn't a priestess, which makes no sense. She stared at our boy with a look as cold as ice. She told us those things are worth a lot, and since her main job doesn't pay well, our boy suggested selling them and she agreed. Our boy asked if the man who bought the relics lives in Latin. She told me she didn't have to sell those old treasures just like that. Finding a buyer in queues would be much easier. The woman told me that her buyer pays really well and she already knows him well. Our boy knows that a tricky spy can only build trust with those who sell secrets about cues by following just one specific path. She's paying for that secret with ancient treasures. After a moment of thought, our hero is ready to ask the final question. We return to the royal palace, where the king receives many requests. Our master, the story's true hero, said he knows that person well, so there's no need for all these checks. He wanted to find out just how many priests from Tencel had walked through those lands. The king can't help but wonder if this is just a lucky coincidence. Right now, there are 14 priests here, while others have traveled to that land with just one simple offer. Hughes didn't force anyone. He just gave them permission to hunt for the targets themselves. Ellen warned that Tencel is in deep trouble and they desperately need many priests. That's why the king gave them permission to go their own way. He still can't figure out what the great mage is talking about, but he knows his son is hunting for the location of all of them, and that curiosity has the king itching to find out. It makes no sense for his son to be so obsessed with that when they're already in a place full of priests. While Hill was sipping from that special wine bottle, the scene around him kept unfolding. Now, the mysterious woman holds a bottle just like it. Our boy caught that tiny detail. Blue Nightingale finally returned to the final question. It looks like she already replied, saying it wasn't very modest. Outside, rushing to get away, Callan saw that his hosts had lied because the priest was being kept hidden there. Kellyan must rush back to the castle right now. He whispered the truth to his master, reminding him that the man he put to sleep during their meeting was sober, not drunk. It was all a performance, and our boy is right in the middle of it. Someone tries to speak to him, but his butler won't let it, and Kellyan has already gone out for his night walk. The old butler said his master wanted to apologize to our boy, so he asked to speak with him. Siegfried Jr. shook his head, saying that wasn't how one should apologize and that a butler has no right to ask about the prince's private life. The old man felt a deep sting of shame. Siegfried Jr. was playing for time because our boy hadn't returned yet, and he couldn't let those people find out a thing. He started pushing the old man harder, ordering him to stop bothering them. Our protagonist grumbled about the racket and yanked open the bedroom door. The butler felt a huge weight lift off his shoulders the moment he saw him. Collien called his own butler incompetent, since his only job was to scare away nosy people. That made the boy apologize because the old man wouldn't leave. Our boy slammed the bedroom door with a rough, angry shove. But deep down he felt relief. His clothes were still damp, and he realized he had perfectly copied his brother's silly antics. With everything settled, his butler admitted he'd slipped back in earlier than expected by climbing through the windows. Callan asked if anything new happened while he was away, but the only thing that had changed was that old man. The trouble is that the Snoops are watching while our boy climbs out the window on the 3rd floor. After being told off, he promised to watch his step more closely. Callan saw his butler looking annoyed and heard a fair complaint, noting that our boy never listens to him. He claimed Callan was out for a walk, but the old man kept returning again and again to speak with our boy, stubborn and methodical, caring more about the timing than knowing where our boy had gone. Talking to his master, he figured out that the lord of that land is already on the alert. It was clear he wasn't even a little bit drunk at that meeting. Now they're about to find something way bigger. His deal with Blue Nightingale might be found out. He could have used the wine bottle as a perfect reason to join the party, but the lord was knocked out by a spell. That's why the butler was so nervous trying to guess what our boy really wanted. He hunts for a sacred treasure to open doors with the holy land of his mother Randall, hoping the baron's generous gifts to all the family heirs will spark the little child's plan. Finding a traitor among the nobles feels less like luck and more like fate pulling the strings. With heavy rain trapping our boy inside the building, he's decided to hunt down the traitor. Hale is absolutely furious now, and he should have seen that our boy was always going to cause trouble the moment his gift came back. That sudden spell has put his plans in serious danger. So angry was Hale that he wished the boy were gone. He's already thrown away plenty of cash to win friends in the political world. He thought he'd get rich farmland near the city, but a messy fight with Sis stole that dream away. The old butler stepped out to talk to him. He still couldn't get a word in with the informant. Enraged, the noble hurled a cup at the old man's head, shouting that he was useless, while the rain meant the hero would stay another day. The old butler asked if we should push the deal to a later time. Hale insisted they had no choice but to wait until the prince is gone. Still seething with anger, he yelled for his maid to fetch his clothes. He's prepared to give our hero a real humbling lesson that he'll never forget. The rain poured down hard outside just as it was time to eat. Hale thinks the hero's steady face is just an act to fool him. He intends to use his title as count to punish our boy for using magic against him. Before long, that young prince will be begging for his life to be spared. As we talked with our boy, someone offered an apology for what happened last night. Kael said everything was fine and went back to eating, while Hale asked if a spell had been cast. Our boy confirmed that the Lord's ways were becoming too hard to bear. It's okay to hold old grudges, since he's letting this one go just because he's hosting a member of the royal family for the first time and is naturally nervous about it. Hale never saw that comeback coming. Now that our boy has proven he is extremely sharp, Hale is the one who looks like the fool. Callian told me he was so tired from hunting down an ambush that he stumbled upon a strange fact. The name of a bird. Hale nearly choked when he heard it, leaving the old steward very worried. Hale whispered that they were mid-conversation with the prince and shouldn't be disturbed. Halen admitted he needs more facts, but the Lord must know exactly what is happening on his land. Hale looked worried and promised to help the investigation because he wouldn't let the prince get hurt on his land. The commander decided to ride up and join them as well. As they spoke, Hale grew angrier until our lucky boy spoke a word that turned the count in our favor. It seems the man finally decided to speak the truth. They all headed to that one little bar together. Hale felt sickened and refused to ever wander to the outskirts like that. Even though the noble tried his best, our boy had already won that fight. The wanderer wondered what had become of his wife. Callian promised that they left his family alone because he gave his word. There was a reason he had to meet that man. Since witnesses saw him try to attack the prince, the punishment will be execution. There was no way to fix it. Even if he gets a second chance, his bad wounds will likely kill him soon anyway. But our hero can still choose a better life with a farm and a small house for him and his wife, if he decides to play along. So all that waits for him is the painful loss of his infected arm. After a moment's thought, the wanderer gave his assent. He admitted that Blue Knight Andale is a spy who has gone there to meet a client. They have known each other for a very long time. When Hale was watching, our boy whispered that a double agent was hiding there. That kind of betrayal is a truly terrible crime. The words that left the poor count made him completely terrified. Callan just sits there, waiting for him to finally act and hand over the rest of the proof. The old steward began begging for his life, claiming he was just doing what he was told. Ellen was totally surprised by what happened, but our boy stepped up to get a better look at the old man and realized he was actually a priest from Tansel. Only they had the power to purchase relics from the gods. The count discovered the secret. The old man is certain he'll have his head cut off once people find out he sold the sacred relics. That puzzled our boy since they weren't actually purchasing the artifacts. The more curious he got, the clearer it became that the old man was finally ready to spill the secrets. The buyer is Vic Count Lannon, Queen Solace's own brother. He's handing the artifacts to Howard, proving that the political games are far from finished. If this happens, Vic Count has dropped the planche to join Randall, so he can't support the Queen any longer. Now that they know the truth, all eyes turn to the very next step they will take. That was the kind of news sure to spark a massive row, so Ellen said they'd better talk to the king first. Right before that, the young prince asked to write a letter addressed to Count Hale. He ordered them to watch over the prisoner's injured arm. Because the wound was so deep, his arm had to be cut off, so he told the prisoner to just accept it. The commander stands ready to take every single order without a second thought. Kiri must track down that man's wife and get her to a safe place. The elf girl was just as eager as Hina, arriving right along to lend a hand with the cleanup. Even though she keeps talking a mile a minute, the prince already knows exactly who she is. Without a spark to start the fire, this will be a tough fight. The butler checked with the prince about the messenger bird, only to learn he had no plans to act. It's time to give it back to the person who owns it. He simply watches as the girls seem to be having fun watching the tiny bird. Callian promises to buy one for Hina when they return to the palace, since that current one must be returned soon. Hina told me her roommate might feel weird around the bird since they share a room. Talion asked her to open the cage near the window at lunchtime because a visitor was coming that night, and while he waited, he quietly read his book. The visitor knocked on the door before anyone thought he was coming. Blue Knight and Gale both said the letter was so touching they couldn't help but feel it deeply. A threat hung in the air, for Callium was ready to tear the shop in the capital wide open and show everyone the truth. She's trying to figure out why all this is going on. The prince dug up proof about the sale of holy items. He wants enough secrets of her own to keep. Even so, she hesitated for a long time before finally giving in, because she had no choice but to say yes. She admits she really hates boring setups. She tossed a few dice right at him. Callan figured out that they were magic bullets. He had to slam up a magical shield to save himself, which blew the room apart and made sure everyone knew what had just happened. Callan slammed the bedroom door shut and locked it tight so no one could get inside. He turned to the woman and asked if she truly meant to kill him. With no bullets remaining, she drew her blade to finish the fight. He knows his plain sword can't block many aura attacks. He has to bring this brawl to a fast stop. After a brief exchange of blows, he knocked her weapon away, only to see that she still had magic bullets in her hand, with one flying straight toward his chest. He skillfully used his sword to block the attack, but the blade ended up badly damaged. Now Talion stands with no way to fight back as a tough woman steps forward with full intent. Two strange balls suddenly dropped onto the floor. With one arm already hurt from learning the prince is a deadly swordsman, the spy knows she can't attack him right now. Kael is seething with rage, scrambling to figure out his next move. So he chose to call her Isla, her true name. That left her stunned. But Callan grabbed her by the throat instantly and realized something was missing right away. The poison meant to stay hidden in her mouth is a secret weapon that every spy Cedric knows possesses. Now she needs to team up and give us the proof we need. I wondered if doing that would get her out of trouble. Callan is getting more and more confused about her. Not sure if she's still loyal to her own cause, or if she has changed over time. Warned the prince that if he wants to stay safe, he must let her go now, or she will shout out his secret to all the knights. Back in the day, Blue Nightingale never betrayed anyone. She used to fight with swords, and she was nothing like this version of herself. That only makes the prince feel even more furious. Callie told him that if he was willing to go this far, he shouldn't have watched her die. A heavy quiet settled between them. The prince set the spy free and told him his secret wasn't nearly as important as he thought. All he wanted from her was the proof, promising she'd walk free without any questioning because he knew she'd eventually have to face White Eagle for what happened. Hale is still furious about everything that is happening. He has no idea what that letter is trying to say. He was told he needed a representative, and someone went to tell the queen what was going on. Here is the letter that the prince's master wrote. Hale just found out his big plan to sell holy treasures has been caught. The great mage was sharp as a tack, and it was the young prince who set everything in motion. Because of everything happening, Hale began to feel like people were underestimating him. But he has a backup plan ready, with tons of treasure already hidden away in his mansion. That should be just enough to slip away quietly. And hidden among them is one special item that is worth more than all the others combined. With all those relics, he's going to get rich. That's when Arkson thanked him for the tip, realizing the guy had been hiding the whole time. Hale nearly fainted from shock when the mage popped into view completely unseen. That was the proof they had been waiting for. Arkson stepped forward and showed the long-hidden relics, revealing secrets that were slipping out of the kingdom. The prince was overjoyed because most of the trouble had already been fixed. The only one still trembling with fear is the prince's butler. He told me that something strange is going on outside. Several knights who belonged to Kaela went to that house. They ought to be watching over the king instead of being absent here. Ellen couldn't figure out why the elite knights were sent there. The king is scared to take a risk, so he only trusts the knights he knows have been good to him lately. The great mage warned that the king's special favor toward the prince could tear apart other family ties, especially since the king, haunted by a tragic past, knows exactly how dangerous such imbalance can become. He promised that his other kids would come along tomorrow. It's time to watch how they act when they're all together. The butler asks the prince if he's ready to go. Kaelin said he still has duties to handle the criminals who will be taken to the capital. It's a sad thing that one of them isn't around to see this anymore. Although the wanderer was thought dead, he actually survived the prince's promise to live quietly in the countryside. The old man is so scared he can't stop wondering what's going to happen to him. The prince knows the old man is to blame for most of it. The old man knows he's totally guilty, but he was just used as a tool. He'll be spared but must swear to serve the prince as his butler, a role that turns out to be a real blessing. Even so, the old man still feels a little bit uneasy. Now Carlion can go back to his main mission and finally track down Safanian. Hale will spend the rest of his days locked behind bars. The blue-haired girl met her fate under the guillotine. Renita is out on the streets today, acting like a special shrub that soaks up all the moisture. The capital was shielded by them, keeping the white stones clean from the red blood of those sentenced to die. Randall is putting the prince to the test because of his ties to the country that wants the artifacts. But for the pilot and the plane, that's the wrong thing to worry about. In truth, he hasn't had a drop of alcohol since the prince departed those lands. The plane asked if his brother misses the drunk version of him. Randall promised that quitting his drinking would let him take on his next quiet mission. But Plainch dropped a fork to show he was already too silent. Back to the prince, they arrived at a part of the path that was extremely dangerous. A huge landslide blocked their path. To keep moving forward, it's best to turn onto a new path. This journey is dragging on far too long. Callion is so fed up that he has decided to set up a teleportation portal the moment he gets back. The elf girl offered to lead them to her village so they could get the help they needed. She told me that Luca is in that village with the elder. They could spend the night there to rest before hitting the road again the next day. The prince's heart swelled with joy at the news. After a quick ride, they reached the village and were left speechless by its beauty. It was built so well that Kaelian never imagined he would ever see an elf village. The leader, a man with wild hair, stepped forward and asked to find the human king. Kaelian said, no one held that title among them, yet he stepped forward to say he was the caravan's representative. Zur, the village elder, has something important to ask of the humans. The prince needs to hear the full story before he decides what to say. Not long ago, 3 elves left the village to visit the humans, and they still haven't returned. Not even the scouts sent to find them have returned. He needed to know if they had found anyone, since they knew almost nothing about the land where humans lived. Kaelian realized that elves were always asking for things. Zur asked the question because he was convinced he was talking to the human king. The prince joked that these people weren't very bright, reminding everyone he was just a prince. The elder doesn't care, but the prince is tired of their simple ways and insists that the difference in meaning is huge. Zur confirmed that he isn't asking for anything for free. He knows the caravan is on its way to Siegfried. Traveling on human roads is slow, but they know the forest so well they can cut the journey time by 4 times, which means a trip that would take 2 months on land can be done in just weeks. That was all it took to get the prince to help them. The elder gave a sly smile. As they searched deep in the woods, they found no sign of the interpreter's footprints. They found some mercenaries, but they don't look like they're up to no good. They might be slave traders, but it doesn't look like it. Kaelian chose to head out and check out the towns nearby. The commander says the cities seem to be fighting against each other. A friendly competition can work wonders, and Kaelian is hoping it just might net him a brand new sword. When he arrived at the first town, he was shocked to discover that no one there carried swords. The prince looked sad, but the seller said he seemed too young to be a soldier. Kaeli explained that soldiers other than the hired guns need them too. The seller shook his head and said he was wasting his time. The lord who hired the mercenaries had already bought every single piece of the weapon stock. Kaelian promised to head to the next town to find what he needed, but the seller warned that it would be a wasted trip since the same trouble is happening there too. At last, the prince finally figured out what the elf needed. 2 cities are marching toward war, and right in the middle sits an elf village caught in the danger. The prince scribbled quick letters to both lords. He'll buy some time to keep the war away, letting the elves go back home. With his work finished, Kaelian is eager to push forward and keep moving down the road. The elder grew worried and asked what he'd do about the war. Kael saw the old man already knew that secret, but he decided to keep it hidden anyway. The elves who never made it home chose to team up with mercenaries instead. You can tell that war is coming because the signs are all over the place. They knew the truth and tried to use the prince to stop it, just because he was a prince. The old elf was backed into a corner, and an upset Cain declared that since their deal was cancelled, he no longer needed the secret pass through the forest. With nothing left to gain, the elder told the prince to wait a bit longer. He simply cannot stand by and let the fighting happen without acting. Kaelian warned that no one can fight on forever. If that village means something to you, then you need to stand up and guard it yourself, not by pulling childish tricks or telling lies. Now the elder is stuck with no choices left at all. Kaelian told us that the merchants hang their roots from above. The prince knows for sure that Bursing is the only one who ever goes that far. The 2 cities on the brink of war both grow their food on dirt so bad it barely feeds anyone. They rely mostly on the merchants to get what they need. Burzin suddenly stopped trading with one of them, creating a huge price difference that made the conflict much more dangerous. Kaelian realized that while trade holds a heavy burden, it falls squarely on the shoulders of ordinary people, never touching the nobles. Suddenly, a knock on the door echoed outside. The old elf walked in to offer a real apology. Luca was the one who pulled the prince right into this trouble. The old man kept his mouth shut because he wasn't sure how the prince would take the news. To make matters even worse, Luca is his own son. Everyone who vanished was tied to him, so fearing the prince wouldn't listen if he knew the truth, the elder begged for forgiveness and offered a huge favor that could save everyone's lives. Kaeli, having no patience for the full apology, just ordered the elder to hand the letters to the lords. He needs to figure out what else they require beyond food, so Kaeli can meet them once he has that answer. The weary elf couldn't believe someone was still helping him, only to hear Kaelian say it wasn't done for him. Even so, the elder promised that elves always keep their word, and he made a solemn vow to remember that act of kindness forever. Later, Kaelian began to dwell on Lannan Barazin, who remains a persistent trouble in his path. He tapped his ring to talk to his master and said it was time to clean house. News reached